1855, Florence, Kentucky. Sheep graze on the open fields that provide the foundation for 4 brick walls. The very first, Florence Baptist Church. Years later, other livestock provided the church with another source of income, which fueled ministry and developed into a movement that has outgrown the hills of Kentucky. Started by 11 men and women who felt a calling to create change, Florence Baptist Church began in 1855 on the corner of US 25 and Main Street. In 25 years, those 11 members grew to 48, and in 1884, Sunday school was organized for the first time. By 1890, the membership had grown to 90, but 9 years later, the church closed its doors. Then, a revival happened. In 1930, a new brick building was opened for worship. In 1948, one of our first missionaries was launched. Gene Bach was given an Argus 3C camera and $700 to be a missionary for 3 years in Nigeria. In 1958, average Sunday school attendance went from 200 to 400. July 24th, 1960 was the groundbreaking for the Greenview Chapel, Florence Baptist's first experience at church planting. In 1967, a new worship center was constructed to hold over 1,000 people. A media ministry via cassette tape started in 1970. A bus ministry to reach young people was started in 1973. In 1995, ground broke for the Christian Life Center that would go on to serve young and old, providing a space for the community to enjoy and grow together. On December 19, 1999, the deacons recommended the purchase of a 67-acre property for relocation. The vote was overwhelmingly in favor of the move. In 2009, the Mount Zion property was completed, and on March 8th, we held our first service in our current building. In 2016, we launched our second location now, the Church at Hebron. In recent years, we've cast a fresh vision for the church, clarifying our mission and aligning ourselves more with the Great Commission. We've started new mission partnerships, strengthening what we're doing with local outreach at Hope Ministries, caring for foster kids through the Forgotten Initiative, and ministering to local schools. We've helped plant churches in the region. We relaunched our second campus, sent hundreds on international mission experiences, and have seen hundreds of people trust in Christ and be baptized.
God didn't save us just to sit and sing. We're a group with a mission. 2 years ago, our team began asking ourselves a few questions. What would it look like for us to have double impact in the next 5 years and beyond? How do we increasingly become a place for people to come to for help? And how can we continue to be a gift to our community? After talking with community leaders, consulting firms, commercial realtors, and financial advisors, we found 6 challenges we want to tackle in the coming years. First, the Church at Hebron is in need of more parking and an outdoor kids space so we can reach more families. Second, Hope Ministries has needed more space for several years. Functioning out of homes that were built in the 60s, there's just simply not enough storage or space to provide the right care for our growing community. Third, we don't have enough space for our kids ministry to continue to grow. Though we built a larger worship space when we moved at the time, we couldn't afford to build commensurate space for preschool, kids, and students. Fourth, there are not enough options for childcare in our area. 10,000 kids 4 years old and under live in a 10-minute drive to 642 Mount Zion Road, and that number goes to 12,700 if you include 5-year-olds. Fifth, we need to help the community relationally connect. People aren't simply looking for a friendly church, they're actually looking for friends. 1 in 3 Americans claim to be lonely at least once a week, and it's still considered an epidemic in our country. And finally, Gen Z was retreating from the church, has now stabilized, and is experiencing revival to some degree. Right now is the greatest time to capitalize on the younger generations, and we want to be the change. So, we have a vision, and the vision is big. We believe that we're strategically placed to address some of our own issues while also being a good resource to the community. So first, we will increase parking and provide an outdoor kids play space at the Church at Hebron. Second, we have recently purchased a new building for Hope Ministries, and we will finish paying off the short-term loan for the new property. Third, we will build a designated student worship space and a double gym where we can provide outlets for connection and community, a place that can hold 300 students on Wednesday nights and hold student small groups on Sunday mornings. Fourth, we will renovate and expand the Kids and Kids Junior ministry areas to accommodate for the growing attendance and community. The number one sign of a growing church is a growing kids ministry, and fortunately, that's us. By adding an additional 12,000 square feet, we will provide space for, well, more kids. Fifth, we will create a space where the community can connect and grow together on campus anytime throughout the week. People can use this space for meetings, one-on-ones, co-working space, and more. A space that will transform our front entrance to welcome and accommodate far more guests than ever before, and it will include a large indoor play space for kids. 6, we will build an event center for large group gatherings such as weddings, banquets, and conferences, along with some cottages to help foster kids in transition. Finally, the community will also be able to connect outside of our building with an outdoor recreation area with a covered pavilion and a walking trail that surrounds our entire campus. Now, the Great Commission is what drove those believers that started our very own church in the 1800s, and it's still God's plan for today. Our anchors that we introduced in 2022 are that we want everyone to experience Jesus, grow together, and make a difference with their lives. We exist to multiply gospel impact locally, nationally, and internationally. Our mission is to leave the 99 to pursue the one, to help not the healthy, but the sick, to seek and to save the lost. Luke 15 says, "Who among you has 100 sheep and loses one of them? Won't you leave the 99 in the open field and go search for the one that is lost until you find it?" We are called to better serve the people God is entrusting to us as our church grows along with those in our community. We need to expand the footprint of both of our properties and capitalize on the amazing opportunity we've been blessed with. We've been handed the baton of responsibility to carry the mission forward in our lifetime, and we fully expect increased gospel impact as we pursue God's expanded vision for Florence Baptist Church. Now, we can't do all of this at once, but we are excited to begin this vision with the student worship space and gym. Over the next 2 years, the ongoing and expanded mission requires a financial investment of $16 million comprised of our yearly ministry budgets and our first phase. As we move forward, we'll have a one fund initiative, meaning that all of our regular giving and all of our initiative giving over the next 2 years will be combined into one unified fund. See, this isn't just a building campaign, it's all one mission and therefore all one budget. The mission of the church was given by Jesus when he said, "Go make disciples of all nations." For over a century, our mission has remained the same, and we believe with the opportunity at hand, Florence Baptist Church could impact more people than ever before. This is the kind of work that if the church ever writes another history book, this might have its own chapter. The stories of the lives that will be changed, including ours, is going to echo into eternity. We want everyone to experience the joy and freedom that comes from trusting God, relying on Him more, and growing in generosity. For the One is an opportunity for all of us to lean in, pray, and take part in something meaningful, ending with a commitment to give over the next 24 months. That's our first goal. And here's what we believe. If we do this together, God will provide through us what's needed to reach our second goal, $16 million. That amount will cover everything Florence Baptist is doing week in and week out for the One, and also help make room for even more people through future expansion. In Luke 15, Jesus shows us the heart of God toward people far from Him as the shepherd leaves the 99 to pursue the one. Join us as we strive to multiply gospel impact, fulfill God's mission for the church, and search for the one.
All right. Well, hey, good morning, everybody. My name is Neal. I'm the campus pastor here at our Church of Hebron location. If you're new, I'm so glad that you're with us here this morning. This is every August, we as a church try to refocus on our mission as a church. And our mission is built around people. And so this year, we're doing the same thing, but we are expanding this conversation to talk about some of the needs that we have in our ability to reach people. So if you're new here this morning, what I want to encourage you to do is just kind of relax and take this in. You're going to get a good, fresh vision and perspective of our church. We are not a church that simply wants to exist week to week. We are a church that is serious about trying to reach as many people as possible with the gospel. And so you're probably going to drink from a fire hydrant a little bit this morning, but that's okay. You know, you get water still. So, but it'll be really good. I'm really glad that you're here this morning. Before we begin, I just want to say that we as a church are a group of imperfect people worshiping and learning and serving a perfect God. And so, sometimes when you walk into churches, you get the impression that man, this church feels like they've arrived and everybody is like super spiritual and that kind of stuff. That's just not us. We're in process. We're growing closer to Jesus. We're grateful for our perfect Savior, and we're just walking along that journey. So we invite you into that journey with us. The second thing, Mike mentioned this earlier during the hosting piece, but if you don't have a book, even if you're new, I'd encourage you to just get a book so you can kind of see what's going on. And so, Mike, if you could just help us, this is the awkward part of it. If you could just be willing to slip up your hand if you don't have a book, we can get those to you, and then it's totally fine. And that way we can try to make sure that you can see what we have going on. So, thanks for being here this morning. As we enter a new chapter at our church, this really does have the potential to be an incredible time as we focus our time and our talents and our abilities and our resources in helping people who are not yet followers of Jesus to experience Jesus for the first time. That is our goal. That is our desire. The whole idea, the title of this sermon series is For the One. When we talk about the one, it comes from Luke 15, this idea that there are people which were just like us who didn't yet experience Jesus firsthand, who we want to experience Jesus firsthand. We want them to do so. These are our ones, and they're people that we love and care for, that we want to have them put their faith and trust in Jesus so they can experience the life-changing power of God's grace. And so this is what the initiative is all about as a church. And even as we talk about the expansion of our campuses and with things like buildings and parking lots and play areas, it's not actually really about properties or buildings or structures. It's actually about people. That's what we're really about. And so I want to maybe just have a sidebar discussion as we begin this morning about churches that are on mission, the mission of reaching people, and what that looks like. You see, churches that are on mission and trying to reach people see properties and buildings and structures way different than churches that are not on a mission when they look at buildings. You see, when churches are on a mission see buildings, they see them as the beginning of an expanded opportunity to reach people. When churches that are not on mission look at buildings and building projects, they see those buildings very differently. They see them as upon the completion of those buildings, that basically that is the culmination of the mission. And that's actually, if you've ever been a part of a church before, where they have built a building, but the church isn't really about people, what happens is when they build the building, there's a couple weeks where there's a ton of people there and there's a high attendances, but then over the course of 6 months and 9 months and a year, all of a sudden attendance just plummets. And the reason for that isn't because the building's bad. The building's probably really cool, right? But it's because the building was the entire goal. And the mission wasn't about people, and that gets revealed over the course of time when the building is completed. And so we are a church that really desires to reach people. It is about people. And so we see that as just the beginning. The completion of the building is just simply the beginning. A church on mission never sees a building as the goal. They always see it as a tool, which, by the way, is true of our money as well. Our church on mission always sees the building as a means to an end, not the end itself. So when Jesus comes back one day, he's not going to look around and go, man, that church, man, just killer structures, very innovative, outstanding, and that church has got a tremendous bank account, and man, that's really good. They've done exactly. No, that's not what God will do in terms of evaluating the mission of the church, the work of the church. It has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with the people. And so we can't afford to get tempted into believing that the building is the big deal. Now, having said that, you're like, Neal, you're spending a lot of time explaining how buildings aren't all that, right? That you just are we building some stuff? Yeah, we are. But I want us to understand why we're building stuff. There are certain points in the life of a church where the building itself that they're in hinders the ability to reach people. That can happen. If you're this works the same way, by the way, if you're in a business. Some of you may work in a business where you are going and like the business is growing incredibly, but the building can't sustain it. I was listening to a podcast this week. Some guy has started a knife company somewhere out in Montana, and this thing is crushing it. And they're literally working out of his backyard, like one of his pastures, right? And that's as they're trying to build a building. They've way outgrown this. And the building is hindering their ability to grow the business. And we're not trying to grow a business here, but we are trying to reach people. And sometimes buildings actually hinder our ability to reach people. And that's kind of where we are as a church. And so this is where for us as a church, at both the church at Hebron as well as Florence Baptist Church at Mount Zion, we want to expand so that we can reach more people. And we believe we're at a point where we need to do that. Now I'm going to talk more about how this looks for us at the Church of Hebron in a second. But before I do that, I want us to go to the book of Acts, chapter 4, and I want to draw our attention to something specifically in the text that I think would be really helpful for us. And just even laying aside the building piece, it's good for us as we think about the For the One initiative, but it's also just good for us, no matter where we are in our spiritual journey, to kind of hear this. In Acts chapter 4, we have the church beginning. It really is just begun in Acts chapter 2, and there's a lot of stuff happening. And the apostles who had walked with Jesus their entire lives are actually now stepping up and talking about Jesus and what he's done and his life and his death and his resurrection and his teachings. And they're really going all in on that. And that's gotten some of them in trouble. There's been some healings that were just recently done at the end of Acts chapter 3. And some of the religious establishment, the religious leaders of that day were not appreciative of what was going on. And that's kind of where we pick up the story in Acts chapter 4. I want you to kind of understand this. It's true back in Jesus' day. It's also true today. When you and I truly see the one true God, we will respond by offering him our one and only life. When we have a fresh vision of God and who he really is, what happens in that moment is everything else fades away. Or an old hymn said, the things of earth will go strangely dim in the light of his glory and grace. It's as we catch a vision of who Jesus is, it just radically transforms us. That's what happens in Acts chapter 4. We see this starting in verse 1. Peter and John are these two apostles that have been following Jesus, and now they're talking. They're the ones that are doing the healing that has irritated the religious establishment of that day. Here's what the text says. The priests and the captains of the temple guard and the Sadducees came up to Peter and John while they were speaking to the people. They were greatly disturbed because the apostles were teaching the people, proclaiming in Jesus the resurrection of the dead. And so they seized Peter and John, and because it was evening, they put them in jail until the next day. But many who heard the message believed. So the number of men who believed grew to about 5,000. The next day, the rulers and the elders and the teachers of the law met in Jerusalem. Annas, the high priest, was there, and so was Caiaphas, John, Alexander, and others of the high priest family. They had Peter and John brought before them and began to question them. And they said this, by what power or what name did you do this? Now, you would think that like where somebody comes alongside and heals somebody else, when God heals through an individual, that everybody would be super excited about that. But the problem with that is that there are certain individuals who were not excited Maybe because they were potentially not a part of it. Maybe because they had lost some of the power. You know how certain people are. They just want to be the source through which everything happens. And when they're not the source through which everything happens, they get a little grumpy, they get a little sideways. And so that may have been the case here. You see in the text several individuals not happy. The priest, the captain of the temple guard, the Sadducees, they're all in this. And there's almost like they are hurdles to the gospel. They are trying to resist the good news about Jesus. And I think there's something important to see here in these first 7 verses, is that even for us today, much like Peter and John back then, we need to look at gospel resistance or gospel hurdles as opportunities to exalt the name of Jesus. And that's what's going on here. The priests in that day would have been Levites. They would have been responsible for the temple worship, and yet they're resisting Jesus. The captain of the temple guard would have been a Levite as well. You know, these people that were supposedly trying to help people worship the one true God, and yet he commanded the police force responsible to go after Peter and John. And then we have this group called the Sadducees, which is a weird name. If you've not grown up in church or the Bible, you're like, what a weird name to name a group of people. But there's this group called the Sadducees, and they're religious leaders. They made up the Sanhedrin along with this other group called the Pharisees. And they really did not believe in such a thing as the resurrection. And so when Peter and John are like, hey, I just want you to know that Jesus actually rose from the dead, they're like really not happy about that. And so this entire group of people are offering significant resistance to the message that Jesus really is the Messiah. But in this case, the questioning of the leaders, the resistance of the leaders, has actually opened the door for Peter and John to be able to share the message. They're basically asking them, hey, by what power are you doing this? Right? That's like just teeing it up for Peter and John to continue to sharing about Jesus. They're like, well, what power? Hey, we appreciate the question. We'd like to talk to you about that. And so they go in and basically just tell them, like, this is it. By what power is Jesus, the guy you said that didn't rise from the dead, but turns out he rose from the dead. And so he's going on and they're going on and explaining about who Jesus is. One more note here I think is important for us to see, that in the resistance, in the question of the resistance, they don't debate the validity of the healing of the person. They just want to try and figure out by what authority it happened. They have to acknowledge that the healing happened. They have to acknowledge the power. It's very interesting. The gospel has power. And so when we look at a moment like this, and we look at what was going on here, we see Peter and John offering their lives in response to what Jesus has done. And we see that when we offer our lives, even in difficult moments, God gets the gospel out. And let me just say a word of application to us where we are this morning. You may have had a week this past week. You know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about like a week, right? So Colleen and I have had a great summer. We've really enjoyed summer. We say that every summer, man. We love summers. Summers are awesome. It's great. We love to do a bunch of things. But this has been a week for us. This has been a real week. I'm a pretty calm person by nature. And I said some things on Friday. I was a little hot about some stuff. And so I had to like, okay, Lord, you got to like dial me back in. Actually, it was yesterday. Sorry. It was just not even 24 hours ago. It's been a week. You know, in those moments, if you've had one of those weeks, if it's been a week like that this week, I actually go back and look at this passage. All of the difficulty that Peter and John went through, and yet they saw how that really could be an opportunity to catch a fresh vision of the one true God. And I would just say for Colleen and I, this is an opportunity for us to catch a vision of the one true God, even in the middle of this week. And the same is true for you guys. Wherever you are in your life, if you're going through difficult circumstances, it's an opportunity to catch a fresh vision of who God is and to offer yourselves in response to him. Now notice, verse 8 continues on. Then Peter, filled with the Holy Spirit, said to them, rulers and elders of the people, If we have been called to account today for an act of kindness shown to a man who was lame and being asked how he was healed, then know this, you and all the people of Israel, it is by the name of Jesus Christ of Nazareth, whom you crucified, but whom God raised from the dead, that this man is standing before you healed. That's a pretty comprehensive statement of what happened right there. And then he says this in verse 12, in case they didn't get it, verse 11, Jesus is the stone you builders rejected, which has become the cornerstone. Salvation is found in no one else, for there is no other name under heaven given to mankind by which we must be saved. That's a short way of saying Jesus is it. Jesus is the real deal. Here's the opportunity to exalt Jesus. You see, if we're thinking about giving our lives to something this morning, there's a lot of things that we're considering giving our lives to that aren't worth giving our lives to. All right? I'll just tell you right now, don't give your lives to the Reds. You're going to be disappointed, okay? I'm just saying. I'm not going to talk about football yet, but we can talk about that. The point is, there's a lot of things that we give our lives to that aren't worth it. Jesus is the one person, the one pursuit worth giving our entire lives to. And that's what Peter and John say. What happens is when you experience the grace of Jesus in your life, truly experience the grace of Jesus in your life, not just come to church and hear about God, but when you actually get forgiven and when you realize that you are permanently right with God, when you experience that in your life firsthand, that stuff changes you radically. When you know that you are completely and permanently forgiven of all past, present, and future sins, free to live for Jesus, man, that just changes you. And that's what's going on here in the text. And part of that change is that you realize you now have a name worth talking about. And that's where Peter and John are. So we continue on in the text in verse 13. When they saw the courage of Peter and John, and they realized that they were unschooled, ordinary men. Come on now, that's where most of us are, right? We're just ordinary people. They saw that, they were astonished, and they took note that these men had been with Jesus. But since the man who had been healed standing there with them, there was nothing to say. He's there, he's healed. So they ordered them to withdraw from the Sanhedrin, and they conferred together. What are we going to do with these men, they asked. Everyone living in Jerusalem knows they have performed a notable sign, and we cannot deny it. We know it. But to stop this thing from spreading any further among the people, we must warn them to speak no longer to anyone in this name. Then they called them in and commanded them not to teach in the name of Jesus. But Peter and John replied, which is right in God's eyes here, to listen to you or to him? You be the judges. That's a hard no, is basically what they were saying. And as for us, we cannot help speak about what we have seen and heard. Because again, when you encounter the one true living God, you can't help but give your entire life to him. So verse 21, after further threats, they let them go. They could not decide how to punish them because all the people were praising God for what had happened. You see, if something is truly important, if something is truly valuable, it is seldom easy, but always worth it. And we're seeing that play out in the text for Peter and John. They are all in on Jesus, and they are experiencing conflict and difficulty, but it is totally worth it. You see, when Jesus promises to build his church, he did not promise it would be an easy process. He just promised that the gates of hell would not prevail against it. And I'll say this, if you have experienced Jesus in your own life personally, if you say, you know what, I'm a follower of Jesus, I put my faith and trust in him, you know that the Christian life is also not just this easy thing. It's not the way it works. You're like, oh man, I put my faith and trust in Jesus and then my life is just going to be easy. Money's always going to flow in. Everything's going to be really good. I'm never going to experience any difficulty. My children will rise up and call me blessed. It's just going to be awesome, right? That's not how it rolls. That's not the way it works. There's difficulty in that. Peter and John did not experience an easy life, but at the same time, they saw and experienced the one true God, and they went all in, even though they experienced internal and external resistance. And that's really instructive for us. When we truly see the one true God, we respond by offering our one and only life. Now, we're going to talk more about this and kind of continue to unpack how our spiritual journey kind of impacts all this. But I want to kind of back up a second. In the brief time I have left, I'm going to go over today, just so you know that. Like, I don't know if you were aware of that. So if you need to stand up and stretch, feel free to do that. It's totally fine. It's not going to be that bad, but I just want to kind of like help us here. So Travis, our lead pastor, talked through some basic and important things about this For the One initiative, but we want to talk some specifics about how this will impact our church at Hebron, because there's going to be some unique impacts in this process. And so in order to do that, I kind of have to give a little bit of background first to explain this. So that's why I need the extra time, all right? So let me kind of start off this way. We are 17 months into our existence as a campus. All right? So it's really good. I kind of feel like in some ways it reminds me of like a 17-month-old kid, you know, like great progress, but like, oh man, like there's a lot ahead of us, right? And so it feels this way. God has really blessed us. Like we regularly, Mike and I get regularly asked by people and staff at our Mount Zion location, like, how's it going at the church at Hebron? And of course we say it's going great. It is, it's really going great. In the last 2 months, we have had 2 of the highest attended Sundays as a campus that are like that are non-holidays. There's just like run-of-the-mill services and people to show up. One of them was last week. We were like, okay, I'm sure anybody's going to show up. This because it's like the summertime, and then like everybody shows up. So we don't know week to week what's going to happen. I've tried to explain to people when they ask how it's going. I'm like, well, it's the best way I can explain is it's an adventure every week. We have no idea what to expect. Okay, so like. It's just an adventure. We don't really have fully established rhythms yet. Like, there's a good stretch of a period of time where this service was the largest service, and then for the last 4 months, it's been the smallest service, and not even close. And I'm like, I don't know what to make of that, right? So it's just that every week it's a new adventure, and so we've noticed the trend of having a lot of guests recently. And so if you're a guest, man, we're really excited to see it. I'd love to learn more about your story and where you live and what's going on, and try to convert you to a Philadelphia Eagles fan. I can do all that in a brief period of time. So like a lot of this stuff can happen. But this is like we're having fun, like in the sense, but we just don't know what to expect week to week. We got a text in the room this morning, like we are like pretty full back there in kids this morning. All right, that's awesome. We are really excited about that. That's usually the second service, but whatever, So like we just don't know what's going on, and week to week, and so we're very excited about that, and lots to kind of process in this journey. And so because we don't really know what's going on week to week, it's exciting, but at the same time, we don't really have a firm handle on some of the needs that we have as a campus either. And so the Mount Zion campus is like at a very different stage. They have established rhythms and a kind of a longer history, and they have much more clearly defined needs. And so that's good for them, but we are living in the new, and so we're still trying to figure out what we need and what we don't need. And so we'll get there in time, but I would encourage you not to rush to try to get there in time, because the life stage that we are in as a campus right now is a really fun time. If you can be okay with like, I don't know what's going to happen this week. So it's really good. I also want to talk just briefly, secondly, about this idea that we are a multi-campus church, and that being a multi-campus church actually really helps us in a couple of different ways. When you heard about Travis and a lot of the things that we're going to be doing as a church, you caught the vision that this is going to be some really great stuff. And we love the fact that we get to be a part of a church where God is working like he is. And I'll say this, I've said it before, and I'll say it again. we know that we are not the only church in the area that God is working through. We know that. We have some great partnerships, and we pray for other churches in the area, like locally for us, like the Link Church and Hebron Baptist and First Church. And we get the sense that God is doing a lot of great things in those churches and places. And so we're super excited about that. Like, that's not a negative, all right? That's a positive. But we also get the sense that, like, God is doing something special here. And we don't want to miss that. Like, we're cheering our friends on at those other churches, and we hope God does some really great things, but we're also really excited about what God is doing here. We're excited about you. We're excited about the people that we're able to reach through being here. And so we're thankful for that. And we're thankful for our Mount Zion location as well and what God is doing there. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, Neal, like as I looked at all this stuff and the things that we're going to do through this For the One initiative, a lot of that money seems like it's going to be spent at the Mount Zion location. And so I would say to you that probably is likely the case, that there is the majority of the money will be spent at the Mount Zion location. But I want to help us think through this well as we process this. Number one, we are one church in two locations. And so we as a campus, we are into reaching people. And if everything that we are doing at our location, if we are giving to the For the One initiative, and let's say the only people that we reached was in Union and Walton and Independence, I'm just telling you, that's still a big win. Like, we don't actually just have to reach the people here. Like, we're really into trying to reach people pretty much anywhere. And so if we can reach people in Union and Walton and Independence, that's not a negative. That's fulfilling the mission. And so that's important for us to understand. Now, it's true that we want to reach our neighbors and our community too. And that is really true. We are interested in that. You can't be here very long without finding that out, right? Like, pretty much 2 or 3 weeks, and you're going to figure that out. We are interested in reaching people. We literally were just hanging out at the Country Place Apartments on Tuesday night trying to reach people. So we're serious about that. And we want to reach our neighbors and our community. But this is where the benefit of a multi-campus approach really helps us as a campus. Like, over the course of the summer, we've had 3 of our pastors who normally worship at our Mount Zion location actually be here in the room and preach and lead us and help us with different classes and trainings. And some of that stuff was behind the scenes, but some of that stuff was something you got to notice. And so we are really grateful that we get to be a part of a multi-campus church to be able to borrow some resources from the larger campus. And the other thing I would say is this: like, we had the Hope Truck here about, I don't know, I lose track of time now, somewhere between 2 and 12 weeks ago. How's that? Right? Something like that. But the Hope Truck was here, and so, like, our ability to reach poor and underprivileged people in the Boone County is greatly enhanced through Hope Ministries, and we're able to give clothing and different items to be able to meet those needs. And that truck was, like, right here, and it's going to be back again the second Sunday in September, so we're able to actually reach them. So again, that helps us with from having a multi-site, multi-campus approach. Now, from a financial perspective, I think it's also worth pointing out that the multi-campus approach has been really helpful to this campus too. It provided the necessary and needed initial financial investment to get our campus up and running. Like, the amount of money that we paid initially to purchase this building and to put renovations to this space, that came through a multi-campus approach. The initial investments that we've had as a campus through the Hebron Business Association and through our local schools, we've put a lot of money into our local schools, and we hope to do a lot more of that and into different community events and organizations as we're able. All that initial investment came through being a part of a multi-campus, multi-site church. And so that has been hugely beneficial. Now, we are a church that is self-sustaining, and we're really grateful for your generosity in that process. So that was true starting in December, and it's only continued. You guys have been phenomenal in your investment in this process, and we are fully able to be on our own in that way, and that's great. But the multi-campus approach helped us initially get there in this process, and so we are extremely grateful for that. One more piece that I think is important for you to know related to this multi-site approach. Travis didn't say it on the video, but if you were here in the room, he would say this. Part of the For the One initiative, specifically for our campus, is that as our needs become clearer, we will be in better position as a church to capitalize on opportunities that come up to meet these needs. So let me be clear. As we give financially to For the One, as you pray and ask the Lord, hey, Lord, what would you have me give to this? Just know that your giving and your generosity in that moment is going to free us up as a campus to be able to take opportunities as they become apparent to us in the future. And so we have to think in the long term in that process. All right, now let me talk about the current needs. You still with me? Are we having fun? All right, well, I don't know. Yeah, we're either having fun or we're not. So, okay. So let me talk about the current needs. We have a specific current need as it has to do with our parking area. I'm pulling something on our tech team. Emma, can you help me here? Can you dig around and find that aerial of our campus? I think it might be at the end of the slides. All right, Mike, do that. So, like last Sunday, for example, in the first service, you probably didn't have too much of a problem finding a parking spot. But in our second services, when we have groups that are still meeting here, and we have that second wave of people come in, it's difficult for people to find a parking spot sometimes. In fact, we know this, that over the course of the last 4 months, we've had people that have attempted to come to our services and have turned around and left because they haven't been able to find a parking spot. All right, so on the scale of like failure, that's a failure to the church, right? So like, you can't do that. And you say, well, they can park out in the grass. Well, they may not know that they can park out in the grass. Well, they can park out in the cul-de-sac. That's true, but they may not know that they can park out in the cul-de-sac. So, like, I'm a deer in the headlights when I come to church. Colleen and I visited a church, a large church in Atlanta in July. And I am a deer in headlights coming to a church for the first time. Like, I can't, like, put phrases together to talk to people. I can't, like, and I can't find the right, it's just the parking, everything's a difficulty for me. I have no idea where the worship center is. We walked into this place, I have no idea where the worship center is. I'm standing around looking at people, they're fully confident, I have no idea where anything is. So, like, I'm just hopeful I can find the restroom, all right? And even that's sometimes a challenge. So, I understand how that feels. We cannot allow people to come to the church at Hebron and not be able to find a parking spot. Just can't do that. All right, when you say, well, Neal, we can find better ways of parking, those of us who are regulars. And that's true. That's true. We have some space in the back. If you're actually here for both services, I would encourage you to not use the parking spaces up front here, but either park in the grass or park in the back. And we can get better at that as a church. But even if we crushed it, even if we maximized every spot, we do not have enough parking spaces. And so we have to figure that out. And say, well, Neal, I'm not going to get super pumped about parking spots. I understand that. Like, nobody here is going, we're all in for parking, you know? I'm giving all my money for pavement, right? So, like, that's just not really like a slogan that we can do. But we have to have parking for people, because the people that we've gotten to meet who have been guests, we just love them. They are awesome people. And we want them to be a part of things here. We need them. We find them interesting and helpful and engaging, and we want to help them on their journey as they help us on our journey. So, like, we need those people. So we've got to have parking. The second thing that we need, and you can see it up on the screen in the kind of the brown grassy area up the top there. I'm going to be directionally challenged here. I think it's straight out this way. Out this way, we own an acre of land. It's all grass. That is ours. For our 1 year anniversary, which if you're doing the math would have been 5 months ago, except for the fact that we had a tornado warning, so it was really only 3 months ago. But on that evening, on a Sunday night, we rented some bounce houses. And while those bounce houses were being put up, all of a sudden, a line of kids formed at the gate or the fence area at Country Place Apartments. It's like these little heads, just barely over the white fence. You can see them all, and they're just popping up and popping up and popping up. And it turns out kids like to have fun. And those kids like to have fun. And so they saw the bounce house, and we had about 20 kids or so roll on in from the Country Place apartments and hang out with us for that entire time. The kids apparently like two things. One, fun, two, food. Okay, which is actually not all that unusual for adults, right? Fun and food. Fun looks a little different for adults, but whatever. So we realized that we actually have an opportunity with an outdoor play area to potentially reach some additional kids. And so some other people have brought this up. We've had some strategy nights where we've talked about those things, but there's been other people that have brought this up. And so we are really trying to focus in on getting an outdoor play area right here at this campus that will allow families to come and to hang out and have a safe third space to just be able to enjoy time with the family. Also, our kids who are hanging out currently in the kids area would love to have a play area to come hang out with as well. And so we want to utilize that in both ways. Now, that's our current needs. And so those, Travis even talked about those two current needs being addressed. One more thing, I want to talk about our future needs. When you look at our Mount Zion location and see what's going on there, it's really a great thing. God has grown that campus through the years. But we believe that God can grow this campus. We believe that God can help us reach additional people here. And as we've seen the attendance trends, we start to see that. And like our next, at some point, if we continue to grow at the rate that we are growing, you continue to invite people, we continue to reach people, we're going to have to go to a third service because that will be our only other option. All right? So third service, great, we're in. You want to do a third service? We're in for a third service. I'm probably going to have to sleep for 3 hours in the afternoon, but it's okay. We can do that. But then we're eventually, at 3 services, you can't really go beyond a third service, right, without just beating people up to death. Your volunteers are dead by the end of that time. So what happens next? And in our dream process, we have that acre of land. What does that look like? Are we talking about the potential of building a worship center over there and making this an entire kids area? Or would God have us sell this property and potentially find some property just north of 275? When we were actually looking at this property, before we did this, there was a piece of property that we looked at north of 275 that I really like. I think it'd be really good as a potential to really reach more people. I don't know what the Lord's got in store. We don't really know for sure. We're still in the early stages, as I said before. But know this, that as you and I commit to giving of our time, talents, resources to the For the One initiative, we do not know what's ahead for our campus. We know we need parking. We know that we need outdoor play area. We know we need indoor play area, actually, as well. We need a whole bunch of stuff. We need something for our students. And we're all trying to work through those things. Our students and our adults, Pat Moynihan's small group on a Sunday, we use the multi-purpose room. And that room helps us be able to meet. It also helps you be able to listen better because you have to because of all the noise that's surrounding it, right? So they can pretty much hear me, they hear the music thumping. I mean, there's just a whole bunch of things that aren't perfect. By the way, Mount Zion has similar issues. That when those students meet on a Sunday morning in the Commons, half the kids are having a difficult time to be able to hear anything because it's so loud in that particular space. So we're not alone in that. My point is that we have a bunch of needs. And we're praying and asking the Lord to give us wisdom about what that looks like for us to reach more people. But that could be, eventually, down the road, a worship space. It could be another property altogether. We don't know. But these are the things that we are wrestling through in this moment. So I want to encourage you this morning. There is real joy, and there can be real joy in being a part of this. And I want you to know that. I want you to be able to experience that. There is nothing like being able to give your time, talent, and resources to reach people. It's one investment that is absolutely eternal in nature. And our goal, as Travis said, is 100% participation in this, and we want you to experience that joy personally that comes from being a part of this. And so I know you may have tons of questions. Mike and I will be around afterwards. As I've told you many times, hang out at coffee shops. I'd be happy to hang out at a coffee shop and talk to you more about this. All you got to do is just tell me. And we are grateful that you have taken the extra time to be with us this morning. Let's worship the Lord as we finish up.